On the paradise island of St. Lucia in the Caribbean, there are ruins that echo a dark period in the island's history.
It's a tropical paradise with these brilliant beaches, and you see these crumbling European buildings.
There's another structure here which looks like it dates to the late 19th century. Clearly, this site was going to see a lot of different uses.
It was obviously in use for a good long time and was worth a great deal of investment. And now it is absolutely going to pieces.
Why were these buildings constructed on such a remote tropical island so long ago?
This place is clearly very, very important. This is the center of a struggle over something worth a great deal.
It's hard to believe that an area so idyllic can be a site for so much violence and conflict.
What did St. Lucia have to offer that saw it become one of the most fought-over islands in the world? The Caribbean, with its fertile soil and warm climate, is the perfect place to grow crops like sugar, which were in high demand in 18th century Europe.
Sugar islands in the Caribbean meant money for the home country. Every country in Europe wanted to have a sugar island or two.
But there was another important feature on the island. It was Castries Harbour.
The Deepwater Harbor, that's the real value of the place. It has tremendous strategic importance.
France and Great Britain, the two superpowers of the period, fought over the island time and again. The conflict began with two failed British attempts to colonize the island in the early 17th century. Within a few years, the French had arrived and purchased it for the West India Company. The British, of course, were not best pleased, and plans were laid to invade the island. The first of these attacks came in 1778, and the scene was set for a series of prolonged and very bitter battles. These ruined fortifications bear mute witness to that struggle. Dr. Gregor Williams is an expert on the island defenses.
We're walking towards the Half Moon Battery, which was built by the French when they started serious fortifications in St. Lucia. And each of these would have been an 8-inch cannon. The French then, with those cannons, would be defending the entrance to the harbor from the British ships that would have wanted to go in.
In St. Lucia, they talk about 7 times French, 7 times British, meaning they passed from French to British control 7 times as these great powers fought for control of this island.
After years of bloodshed, the fighting between the French and British eventually came to an end, and the military structures that dotted the island were abandoned. And that was the way they stayed until the outbreak of World War II in 1939.
When the war started, these buildings had been unoccupied. They were sitting there doing nothing. So the British engaged these buildings to house soldiers of the Second World War.
The Caribbean becomes a vital front during World War II because you think about the Allies in Europe, the Red Army, the US Army, the British Army, they were all basically supplied with oil from the United States. And so all this oil transited through the Gulf of Mexico, through the Caribbean in tankers headed for Europe.
The German Kriegsmarine spotted an opportunity to choke off these essential supplies.
The Germans are trying to use very efficient weapons, small warships and submarines, to sink as much Britain-bound commerce, including American ships, as they possibly can.
But the main threat to merchant shipping came in the shape of the deadly German U-boat.
It's sort of cat and mouse stuff as the Allies are hunting these German U-boats. The German U-boats are trying to dart into inlets and coves, trying to resupply themselves and avoid detection by the Allied destroyers.
Every port in North America, the Caribbean, was filled with people nervously scanning the sea for periscopes.
So new fortifications were constructed to play their part in the fight against the Nazi war machine.
We're on Meadows Battery. First of all, there was an old French fortification there. Then the British came in, and then they established this during the Second World War, when they were fighting against the Germans.
Another thing that these structures tell us is the immense scale of the Second World War and how it really touched every corner of the globe. No place was spared from it.
On the 9th of March 1942, a very young Michael Shasta saw the island fortifications swing into action once more.
In the hours of 9 and midnight, we heard this very loud explosion. So we were immediately awoken, and we looked out of the veranda, and we saw a number of people, and when they were questioned, they said that we were under attack. There was a lot of pandemonium.
The Meadow Battery spat out machine gun fire into the dark waters, but it was hopeless. A U-boat had managed to get into the great deep water harbour of Castries. The results were devastating.
The German U-boat U-161 sneaks silently into the harbor, fires its torpedoes, and sinks two massive British freighters that are anchored there. An 8,000-ton freighter, a 5,000-ton freighter, both sink very quickly with great loss of life.
The German U-boats actually came in from this end. Yeah, they came up quite quickly. It's not a long harbor. And they knew we were ill prepared.
The St. Lucia policeman, the constable who is looking down at the harbor from these old fortifications where this creaky Nordenfeld machine gun is able to bring the U-boat under fire and able to force it back out of the harbor.
Fortunately, U-boat 161 was the last to invade the island. After the war, the military structures that had dominated Castries for so long were finally abandoned. Today, they are still silent, but they remind all who see them of a peaceful, beautiful island's turbulent past.
When you go to Castries today, you see one of the propellers from one of these freighters, which is still displayed as a kind of memorial. You're reminded this was a place that was brutally contested by the great powers because of its economic and strategic importance.
The Second World War is not just a story of the big countries and the big battles. Here, it is a story that is as intimate as a small island's own harbor.